All right, guys, how you doing? And you're welcome. This is week 6 of Sideline NFL edition. My name is enthusiast, and we'll be talking about the NFL games that happened here in week 6 that just happened. There are a lot, and we'll just be reviewing those games. And you're welcome again to the program. Here's how we're going to start. We're going to start first with the Eagles versus Giants. Eagles versus Giants here. We're just going to talk about some of the headlines and make some comments on them. So Eagles versus Giants. Here's what the Giants fans had to say to the Eagles and Saquon Barkley. They said, "Saquon who? We got scattered." And you'll understand in a few minutes because, man, it was a nice game. Very nice game, especially as a Giants fan. So, yeah, number 2, we had the Chargers at Miami, and the Chargers gave a last-minute charge to win in Miami. That was pretty nice. Panthers versus the Cowboys. I believe this was in Panthers in North Carolina, and the Panthers gave the Cowboys the Dowdle revenge. You'll understand in a few minutes. The Chiefs get right game versus the Lions, piercing the Lions in Arrowhead. That's what they did. And then Baker shows why he's the MVP in 2025. The Seahawks steal one in Duval County, Florida. You're gonna understand that in a minute. And the Cardinals tried to remind the Colts how to lose, but Jonathan Taylor was saying hell no, and then he just went wild. He had completely different plans. So let's get on with the games on Sideline NFL edition week 6. We'll be right back. All right, so we're in week 6 of the NFL games. We're going to talk about the 6 top games, and then we'll just review. We'll just go over the other games in, minute purpose. These were the top games for this time. And I know people will say, hey, the other games matter too. They do, but these are the top games that I have. And since I'm running the program for now, or at least the producer has given me the leverage to do that, I will list out the games that I want as top 6 or top 7. Okay, so here we go. So again, like I said, so let's start with the Chargers-Dolphins. So Chargers-Dolphins, it was at Miami, and Chargers came in 3-2, and they had 2 straight losses, one to the Giants and one to the Commanders. And the Dolphins are just trying to win another game. They came in 1-4. So let's see how it went. The Chargers edged out Miami 29-27. In a thriller, and it was the last second Cameron Dicker to actually win the game last minute after Tua actually got the Dolphins the lead a few minutes before that. But hey, it was a thriller, and again, like I said, there are no easy games in the NFL. And really what the difference was in this game was actually the turnovers that Miami had given earlier. I think Tua threw 2 or 3 interceptions, I believe. And it was a clutch thing. It was clutch quarterback play. Tua, even after he through all those turnovers, he was still playing pretty good. But, the Dolphins still lost because they just were too far behind. And also, they played hard, but you know what? It was just kind of hey, the Chargers just found a way to win because they just had to get this win. This was their get-right game. They should have won by a little bit more, but the Miami Dolphins were at home and they just played pretty hard. And look, Miami's trying to get right, to be honest. So let's go over the key moments. Herbert threw a third quarter touchdown to Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey played very well. And then Kimane Vidal flipping the score from 13-9 at the half, and deficit from 23-13. So they were leading 23-13 at some point in time. Then the Dolphins came back. Then they had Benjamin St-Juste intercept Tua Tagovailoa early in the third quarter, setting up a short field touchdown, and the Dolphins rallied, scored twice in the fourth quarter, and then they had a 7-yard touchdown pass from Tua to Darren Waller with 46 seconds left, and then somehow Herbert hit McConkey with 46 yards, a 46-yard pass, setting up Dickers, and Dickers hit a 33-yard field goal with 5 seconds left. It was a crazy game. So it was probably one of the best games in the thing. So let's look at the statistics from the team's end. Statistics, like I said, the score was 29-7 towards the Chargers. The total yards for each team. So the Chargers had 378 yards. And the Dolphins had 341 yards. The passing offense, I believe the Chargers it was pretty much the same. Chargers has 265 and the Dolphins had 258, pretty much the same. Rushing, Chargers edged them out with 113 yards, and then the Dolphins had 83 yards. No interceptions on the part of the Chargers, but the Dolphins had 1. So sorry, it was actually 1 interception that Tua threw, not 3. Sorry, I'm sure they had other turnovers. So the sack total was kind of similar. Chargers had allowed two sacks, and then the Dolphins allowed 3 sacks. We're not going to go over time of possession. That doesn't really matter. Let's go into the player statistics and what they had. So Justin Herbert had 265 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was 24 of 34. And then Camille Vidal, who was the running back on duty that time because their rookie running back, Omarion Hampton's injured, he had 104 rushing yards and 1 receiving touchdown, which was pretty good. Ladd McConkey led the receiving for the Chargers with 5 receptions and 89 yards and 1 touchdown. Tua Tagovailoa for the Dolphins had 27 of 36 in his passing and 258 yards, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception, which unfortunately cost them the game. Then Devon Achane had highest rushing for the Dolphins. He had 46 yards plus a 4-yard rushing touchdown. Darren Waller had one touchdown reception, and then Jalen Waddle is actually holding up the Dolphins for Tyreek Hill, and he's had this. I think this is like his third 100-yard game. So he had 6 receptions for 110 yards. He's doing pretty well, and to be honest, I think that if he stays healthy, they'll find a way to bounce back. So the Chargers made some adjustments in the second half to try to get some defensive turnovers, and which was what helped them out. But the late surge by the Miami Dolphins, which was in their home crowd, they got all the motivation totally, and they were able to try to make something happen. Unfortunately, that interception, that last-minute drive by the Chargers, put the nail in the coffin for the Dolphins. So that was that game, and it was a pretty fun game to watch, to be honest. So if you can watch the highlights, you'll love it. It's great. Next game we're going to go to is the Panthers versus the Cowboys. Like I said, it was Dowdle's revenge. Dowdle used to be the running back for the Cowboys last year. He ran for 1,000 yards. He's a pretty good running back. He's decent. He runs with vision. He knows how to cut pretty well. And they released him, and he just said, you know what, this is his second game. Last week he had over 230 yards or 206 yards last week, which was what pushed the Panthers to win that game. And then this game versus his old team, the Cowboys, he also had 200 yards. So both teams coming in, I believe the Panthers were 2-3, coming in. And then the Cowboys were 2-1. So they have one tie. Green Bay Packers 2 weeks ago, right? So the Cowboys came in and they were the favorites to win this game. Unfortunately, Dowdle had other plans and he went wild. So Panthers edged out the Cowboys 30-27, and it was a shootout. Both defenses weren't really playing defense, and the Cowboys have a high-powered offense, so you got to match them that way. And Rico Dowdle, former Cowboy, torched his team for 239 scrimmage yards, a receiving touchdown, and he also setting a new franchise record for his new Panthers team. Bryce Young, the Panthers quarterback, threw the ball he threw for 3 touchdowns, including touchdown to rookie Ted McMillan, and then also a 71-yard drive to cap off with a 33-yard field goal from Ryan Fitzgerald. Pickens was the standout, to be honest. George Pickens is just doing that stuff, man. He's what we call, again, like the NFL young boy, man. He's just going crazy. He had this sick 45-yard catch where he hurdled somebody, some Panthers defender. I think that was for about 30 yards. But anyways, let's go through the statistics for the players, right, for the whole game. So Bryce Young, the Carolina Panthers quarterback, he had 17 over 25 for basically 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Rico Dowdle had 30 carries for 183 yards. And then he also caught the ball for 56 yards and had a touchdown. Ted McMillan had 3 catches for 29 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Dak Prescott had 25 over 34 for 261 yards and 3 touchdowns. No interceptions, no turnovers for the Cowboys today, but they still lost because I believe the Panthers just outplayed them on offense. And then George Pickens, the NFL young boy, had 9 catches for 168 yards and 1 touchdown. And that crazy hurdle catch he got, I think that was for about 30 yards. It was a great catch. And then Jake Ferguson and Hunter Lupkin both had a touchdown each for the Cowboys. Unfortunately, it didn't result to any kind of win. So total yards for the teams, Panthers had a total of 412 yards, and the Cowboys had a total of 292 yards. And passing, I've already told you that one. Each team had one turnover. One was an interception from the Panthers, and one was a fumble on the Cowboys. None of them had a sack, but hey, it was a great game to watch offensively. Then we go to our Giants. The next game is Giants versus Eagles. So I'll get back to you on that one because I had a lot to talk about in that. All right, we're back to Sideline NFL edition, and I'm Undo Scott. Next game we're going to talk about is the Giants versus the Eagles. So it was a home game for the Giants, and this was kind of like a get-right game for the Giants and also the Eagles because both of them lost. Eagles lost to the Broncos the previous game, week before. In week 5, they lost to the Broncos at home, which was not good. And then also the Giants lost in New Orleans in the Bayou to the New Orleans Saints, which we expected them to win, but it's also home game versus, the home team always plays up. And that's what happened here. The Giants played up in their home field in MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And then the Giants were coming in 2-3 in their record, and then the Eagles were coming in 4-1. The one loss, again, like I said, to the rookies. But this was a massive upset. And look, the guys of the day were Jackson Dart and Cam Skattebo. Like they said, the sign said, look, most Giants fans love Saquon Barkley because of what he did while he was with the Giants. But man, the Skattebo kid, man, they had a sign saying, hey, Saquon who? We got Skattebo, and you'll see why, because this kid's got fire, he's got energy. Him and Jackson Dart are like a combination. They call them the Bash Brothers. They're awesome. So they combined, those two guys, Jackson Dart and Skattebo combined for 4 touchdowns and just beat the heck. The whole offense for the Giants just beat the heck out of the Eagles. Also, the defense for the Giants showed up big time. Some of the highlights are, that Dart throwing for 195 yards. He also ran for 58 yards. He was going crazy. Skattebo had a bunch of different runs, had 110 yards from scrimmage. Wan'Dale Robinson caught a 35-yard touchdown for, in the first half. He played pretty well. Cardell Flott caught an interception in the red zone against Jalen Hurts and almost ran it back for a touchdown. So it was pretty good. And then Dallas Goedert for the Philadelphia Eagles actually caught a career high of 9 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown. Some of the player stats, let's just break down the player stats. So Jackson Dart was 17 over 25 for 195 yards, 1 touchdown. He had 13 carries for 58 yards and a rushing touchdown. So he had 2 touchdowns, 1 passing, 1 rushing. Dart's becoming a big player in this in our season. He's the quarterback of the future for the Giants for right now. Cam Skattebo, the rookie running back as well. He had 3 rushing touchdowns. Then he had 2 receptions for 12 yards. Wan'Dale Robinson was the leading receiver for the Giants. He caught 3 catches for 61 yards and a touchdown. Jalen Hurts was 24 over 33. He had 283 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and 1 rushing touchdown. He actually played fairly well, but the problem was he kept on missing open receivers. So statistically, he looked pretty good, but when you see his play, he just was missing open receivers. And there's a lot of drama between him and A.J. Brown right now because he just doesn't feel like he's catching them at the right time. So A.J. and him have to work out a lot of stuff. Dallas Goedert caught 9 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown. A.J. Brown did get more involved. Like I said last week, they need to involve him a little bit more. And then he caught 5 catches for 82 yards. So the thing about it I see is the Eagles need to reestablish their running game. Their running game is right now with Saquon Barkley, it's like non-existent. I don't know if they're holding him over for later on in the season, but right now they need to start winning games. So by next week, you need to see things change. Now the Giants and the Eagles are going to meet in week 8, not next week, so the week after, and I think it'll be a revenge game for the Eagles, and it's going to be in Philadelphia. So that will be a tough game for the Giants. But anyway, let's look at some of the team stats. Total yards. Like I said before, the game was 34-17, and it was really a beatdown because the Giants really roughed up the Eagles, but statistically it was kind of close. So total offensive yards for the Giants was 366, while the total offense for the Eagles was 339. Passing yards, the Eagles outpassed the Giants by a little bit over 67 yards. So Eagles had 266, while Giants had 195. Rushing yards, the Giants outrushed the Eagles. They had 172, while the Eagles only had 73. The Eagles really have to work on their running game. They need to get Saquon Barkley more involved in that running game. Give him more touches, more carries in the game, or mix his touches up with other Eagles running backs if they're worried about wear and tear. Now, sacks allowed. The Giants sacked the Eagles 3 times, and then they allowed 2 sacks on their end. So that was that game. It was really exciting, especially for a Giant fan. It was great to see us get that win. Those are some of the wins we needed to get in the season to at least see that we're making progress. A lot of Giants fans, Giants don't expect to per se get into the playoffs, but they want to see some growth. So that's what Daboll and his team's trying to do. All right, next game, we're going to talk about the Chiefs getting their get-back game against the Lions at home in Arrowhead. So we'll be right back for that. All right, we're back. So this is Sideline NFL edition. This is Andrew Scott. We're here again. So the next game is the Chiefs versus the Lions. The Chiefs beat the Lions 30-17. It was a really statement win for the Chiefs, especially at home. They had to win this game. They came in 2-3, and then the Lions came in 4-1. But they ended up being 3-3 because they beat the Lions. And it was, the Chiefs really dominated most of this game if you watch it. Chiefs came in and they powered through with a lot of Mahomes' plays. He had 4 total touchdowns, and he really led the team. There was a lot of yapping between the two teams. And at the end of the game, actually, there was a brawl between Branch, he was a cornerback, versus Juju Smith-Schuster. And even Mahomes tried to shake his hand at the end of the game. He didn't want to shake his hand, but he got into a brawl with Juju Smith-Schuster. I believe he got suspended for 1 game after that. So he's not going to be playing in week 7. However, it was a pretty good game. Mahomes, he threw 3 touchdowns and rushed for 1. He got Hollywood Brown involved, Xavier Worthy involved. He got all his guys, Kelsey, involved. And then Goff was getting his guys involved early, but they got stifled towards the end. Kansas City's defense did not let them do anymore. So Kansas City's defense stepped up this game. They were making better tackles. Keynote to know that Kansas City will be getting one of their key receivers back in week 7. He had a 6-game suspension. So his suspension ended after this game. I believe his name is Rasheen Rice. He's a really good running back. This is his 3rd year in the league, and he was suspended over a car accident that he was involved in at the end of his rookie year. So he will be back, and it will be perfect for him to come back just after this win. They're going to need all the firepower they can have, and he's going to really be a great asset to the team. So let's talk about some of the player stats. So Mahomes, 22 of 30, really clutch this time, and he had 257 yards and 3 touchdowns. He ran for 34 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. Hollywood Brown had 4 catches for 45 yards, 2 touchdowns. Travis Kelsey had 6 catches for 70 yards, no touchdown. Jared Goff he was 21 of 29, 38 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jameson Williams was the leading receiver for the Detroit Lions. He had 5 catches for 88 yards and 1 touchdown. Sam Laporta also had a pretty good game. 4 catches for 4. That's the tight end for Detroit. He had 4 catches for 42 yards and 1 touchdown. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make any of those things like key touchdowns later in the game. The defense really just stopped, Kansas City's defense really stopped them at key points. So total yards for each team on offense. So Kansas City had 361 yards and 361 yards of total offense, while the Lions had 312 yards of total offense. Again, also, Kansas City got their running backs involved. So you can see they're getting their running backs more involved, and they're able to rush and kind of control the clock when need be. So that's what they needed to do. Kansas City's offense looked sharp, very balanced. Again, like I said, run and pass. It looked very balanced, while Detroit's defense struggled with injuries and coverages and coverage breakdowns. So Detroit's defense has some injuries, but hey, look, you play the team that's in front of you. Even Kansas City is not in full effect. So Kansas City will get Rasheen Rice back in week 6, adding some more firepower to the AFC West. Are they the leaders now? No, they're second. They're not the leaders right now, but adding some more to try to fight back and become the leaders of the AFC West. So next game is Colts versus the Cardinals, and this was a really good game. You're gonna want to hear about it. It's got a good running back in it. I love running backs, so we'll be right back and talk about it. All right, we're back. So next game is the Colts versus the Cardinals. The Colts versus the Cardinals was a great game. It was a very so essentially the storyline with this is the Cardinals lost Kyler Murray, their lead quarterback, and they brought in a backup quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, who really, really shined in this game. And he made it really, really close. It was in Indianapolis, and it was a very close game. They almost beat the Colts, who are like the top guys in the AFC South. And the Colts almost lost this game, but but Jonathan Taylor and Indiana Daniel Jones just refused to lose. So let's get it started. So Colts rallied in the fourth quarter to defeat the Cardinals in Week 6. And Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor led the comeback, while Jacoby Brissett kept the Cardinals competitive with a strong passing performance. And that's basically what happened in the game. It was fantastic. Let's look at some of the highlights. Jones threw for 212 yards and 2 touchdowns, including key scores late in the game. Jonathan Taylor ran for 123 yards and had the go-ahead win touchdown with 4 minutes and 32 seconds left in the game. Jacoby Brissett was filling in for Kyler Murray, passed for 2 touchdowns, including key touchdowns to Trey McBride and Greg Dortch. Colts scored 14 points in the fourth quarter and erased a 24-17 deficit that they came in the fourth quarter. So it was a very close game, like I said. They just couldn't lose. They almost forgot that they were not losers anymore. They just were like, you know what, we're not going to lose anymore. Player stats, Daniel Jones, like I said, he was 22 of 30, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had 1 interception, but then he erased that by running for 20 yards and scoring a touchdown. Jonathan Taylor was 21. He had 21 carries for 123 yards. 1 touchdown. Tyler Warren, the rookie tight end, who's just being amazing. If you have him in your fantasy, you're killing it right now. 6 catches for 63 yards, 1 touchdown. Josh Downs, the other leading receiver in Indiana for the Colts, he had 6 catches for 42 yards and 1 touchdown. Jacoby Brissett was 27 of 44. He threw for 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Tyler McBride was the lead receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. Tight end Tyler McBride caught 8 passes for 72 yards, 1 touchdown. Zay Jones, 5 catches for 75 yards for the Colts. And then Deutsch caught 3 passes and caught 1 touchdown. Total yards for each team. So the Cardinals actually outgained the Colts by 20 yards. They had 408 yards of offense, and the Colts had 389 yards of offense. Each team had a turnover, and each team had only allowed 1 sack. So, look, the Colts, their defense is a bit of an issue. They do let up a lot. They've started to let up a lot of yards in the last game. There's not in the last few games. They're not creating a lot of pressure, and I feel like that's going to bite them later on in the season once teams know that that's their weak spot, that they can't generate any real pressure. So they got to figure that out. All right, so the next game, you're going to like this. This is my MVP pick for the season, and this is his team. He is killing it. Baker Mayfield is he's the man. You can't lose. So we'll talk about him when we come back. All right, well, we're back. So this is Sideline NFL edition. And I'm Andrew Scott. We're going to be talking about some more games in the NFL. So, like I said, hey, look, fantastic game. The Buccaneers versus the 49ers. I already picked the Buccaneers to win this game because 49ers have too many injuries. And it played out basically like I thought. Plus, Baker Mayfield is my MVP for this year. So Buccaneers beat it was at Florida and Tampa, Florida. The Buccaneers came in 4-1. The 49ers came in 4-1 as well. And each team had, 4-2. Yeah, 4-2. So they came in 4-2. The Buccaneers came in 5-1. And each team was basically evenly matched on paper, but Baker Mayfield is the X factor. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers handily defeated the San Francisco 49ers 30-19. Baker led his team to a clutch performance, resilient defense on the Bucs side too. They improved to 5-1, while the San Francisco 49ers fell to 4-2. Baker Mayfield had two passes, including a key 45-yard strike to rookie Tez Johnson. Unfortunately, my guy, Emeka Ibuka, actually got injured in this game. Hopefully he returns. We're going to find out more information about how his health is as it goes, because he was killing it as well in the games before and also in this game. This also means that the Bucs don't have any real starting wide receivers anymore in the lineup. So Baker's just using, his tight ends and running backs and, backup receivers to beat people. So he's just rolling through. So Baker's third, he had an amazing scramble actually in the fourth quarter where the 49ers had him dead to rights. And he's not the fastest guy, but he's very quick and shifty. And they just could not catch him. And it was 14 yards left for him to get a first down. And he scrambled, broke tackles. He was so elusive, eluded every tackle, and still stretched his hand out to get that first down. It was it was really amazing. So anyways, backup quarterback for the 49ers, Mac Jones, started for the injured Brock Purdy. He passed for 375 yards, but he threw two interceptions, which I believe the Buccaneers were able to convert to scores. And these were pretty costly, especially in the fourth quarter. The all-pro linebacker, unfortunately, for the 49ers, Fred Warner, had a serious ankle injury. He dislocated his ankle, and I believe they say he's going to be out for the most of the season, if not all the season. So that's sad news for the 49ers because they have a huge list of injured players, including the quarterback, their starting tight end, their starting receiver, and even their secondary starting receiver, Ricky Pearsall. It's really bad. But let's go into the stats for the players. Baker Mayfield was 17 of 23, 256 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Tez Johnson, who stepped up after Emeka Ibuka got injured, he caught 3 passes, 78 yards, 1 touchdown. Rashard White, who stepped up also in the running game, had 2 rushing touchdowns. He had a total of 89 yards from scrimmage. Mac Jones, who was filling in for Brock Purdy, was 28 of 41. He had 347 yards. He had 1 touchdown, but 2 costly interceptions. Christian McCaffrey, top running back for San Francisco, he had 1 rushing touchdown, 62 total yards. I don't know what's going on with them this year. They're not able to run the ball as efficiently. That's San Francisco, and it's kind of a problem. And then Eddie Pinheiro for San Francisco was 4 of 4, and he had a long of 54 yards field goal. So that was pretty good. Total stats for each team, the total offense that the San Francisco 49ers had. The San Francisco 49ers actually outgained the Buccaneers by 30 yards in total offense. They had 389 total yards, while the Bucs had 352. So I think if Mac Jones did not throw those interceptions, this might have been a closer game. But I still think the Bucs would have won. Plus, they're at home. Plus, it's Baker Mayfield, and he's my MVP. So forget about it. And then also, the Bucs were able to generate more pressure and create more turnovers. So the Bucs had 0 turnovers on their offense, 1 sack alone. But their defense was able to generate 3 sacks against the 49ers. All right. So we'll go to the next game, which is the Seahawks versus the Jaguars. We'll come back and talk about this real quick. It's a pretty good one, too. All right, so we're back. So Seahawks versus the Jaguars. It was a pretty interesting game. I actually expected the Jaguars to win this game, but you know what? The Seahawks and Sam Darnold, in his new redemption form, he just wants to get back to the playoffs. He wants to show that he's he's a number 1 pick. He was a legit number 1 pick. And you know what? He showed it here against the Jaguars, going to Duval County and beating a very, very strong, tough Jaguars team that actually beat the Chiefs in Duval County last week. But I feel like the Chiefs could have won that game. They just messed up at the end, to be honest. But the Jaguars are still a pretty good team, and I think they're a playoff team. So the final score was the Seahawks 20 and then the Jaguars 12. The Jaguars struggled with penalties and protection issues, while the Seahawks capitalized on key moments to secure the win. They had very explosive plays, also a lot of explosive plays to Jackson Smith and Jigba, another Ohio State receiver, just like my boy Emeka Egbuka, who was able to just kill it last week. So and they were going. Emeka Egbuka and Jackson Smith and Jigba were going, shot for shot last week when the Bucks played the Seahawks at home. They both got 100 yards receiving in the game, and their stuff was identical. Key moments: Jackson Smith and Jigba caught a 61-yard pass from Sam Darnold in the second quarter, and also Cooper Kupp added his first TD as a Seahawk with an 11-yard grab in the third quarter. Trevor Lawrence threw for 2 touchdowns for Jacksonville, including a late strike to Tim Patrick, but the offense stalled in the fourth quarter and basically could not do anything more. Let's talk about some of the player stats. Sam Darnold was 21 of 32, 278 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jackson Smith and Jigba had 6 receptions for the Seahawks and 162 yards. I think that's a high for him. And 1 touchdown. Trevor Lawrence, 27 of 42, 58 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then his top receiver was Brian Johnson Jr., one of my fantasy guys. And he had 8 receptions for 90 yards and 1 touchdown. The Seahawks had 7 sacks in this game, which is crazy, and 17 quarterback hits. That means the Jaguars cannot pass block. Like, it really is. That's what that means. To get 7 sacks is crazy in the game. So that's what it is. So anyways, these are the top games we have for the week. We're going to go through all the other games and just kind of like run through them. We're not going to go into so much detail because, I got a lot of stuff to do today. But, we'll talk about them real quick and just give some insight into those games. And then, we'll end the week and review. And then we'll look forward to next week. All right. Have a good one. We'll be right back. So the next game, we're going to talk about a few of the remaining games in the league for week 6. We'll just run through them. Like I said, we're not going to dwell too much on it. I'll talk about some little aspects of them, what is key there for each team or the key teams there. So the first game we're going to talk about is the Steelers versus the Browns. It was 23-9 to the Steelers. It was at home. Aaron Rodgers shows he still got it. He's the old man quarterback, still got it. He threw for 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, and DK Metcalf, his top receiver, got 95 yards and 1 touchdown. The Patriots beat the Saints at home, and basically the Patriots used their defense to stifle the Saints. And I mean, it's Mike Vrabel's defense. So they had 2 interceptions against the Saints and then 4 sacks, which is a lot. That's basically going to win you the game. But it was still a very close game. The Saints are a very, 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 very tough team. They're very rugged and they're like porcupines. They went, especially at home, they ain't going to give you nothing, man. So they're a very tough team to beat. And I think that's a good thing to look towards for the Saints. So they just need to keep doing that. They'll win maybe 1 or 2 more games, probably 2 more games if they keep playing the way they're playing. So that's pretty good especially for the rookie coach, Kellen Moore. The Rams went into the Ravens and beat the Ravens. They didn't smack the Ravens like I thought they would, but they beat the Ravens handedly, 17-3. And this Ravens team obviously doesn't have Lamar Jackson, but I think even if they had Lamar Jackson, they have so many issues on defense. It's crazy. They can't stop anything. They can't stop the run, which is weird because the Ravens, the same defense from last year, came in this year, and they had a very good run defense. So I don't know what's happening. All right. So another game from the weekend, Raiders versus the Titans. Raiders get their second win of the season against the Titans, and the Titans, they beat the Titans 20-10. It was a pretty rugged game, but it was defense that won this game for the Raiders. The Raiders got 3 sacks against the Titans and they caught 1 fumble recovery, which they turned into a score. The Titans officially lost their coach Monday, the 13th of October, 2025. He got fired. I didn't expect him to get fired because I expected he's the second year. He only had last year, and then he got his quarterback this year. I thought they would have let him ride out the season, but I guess the management or the ownership just had seen enough, and they decided to get rid of him. So They fired him. I don't know how that helps the team, to be honest. You shouldn't do that with a rookie quarterback. So that's interesting. Let's see if it makes a difference, if a change of coaching does anything for the team. All right, then we have the Packers versus the Bengals. The Bengals just brought in Joe Flacco from the Browns, and he started his first game here, and he actually played pretty well. To be honest, this was not a very, very good looking win for the Packers, despite the score. They still look very lethargic, and their offense doesn't, or defense, they don't look confusing. It looks like they don't look very convincing. It looks like they're laboring to try to get things going either on offense or defense, and it's just weird. I don't understand what's happening with them, but maybe they'll figure things out. But they got a receiver back, a key receiver back, Christian Watson, that's on the Packers. He caught 2 touchdowns, and he received the ball for 102 yards on his return. So I think if they get that firepower back, at least that'll help them a little bit. Let's see. But I'm more concerned with their defense and how they have Micah Parsons, and they're not really able to do a lot of damage. Even though they're able to get sacks, they're not able to do a lot of damage. I did know that they would have an issue with the run defense because Parsons is not a run stopper, and I don't think they did give away a run stopper to Dallas on the trade for Micah Parsons. All right, so for Monday Night Football on the 13th of October, we have 2 games. One game was the Falcons versus the Bills, and the next game was the Bears versus the Commanders. Now that Bears versus Commanders game is a revenge game, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes when I come back. All right, we're back, and this is still Sideline NFL edition, and my name is Indu Scott, and I'm going through all the week 6 games. So the Monday night games were Falcons versus the Bills, and Falcons actually beat the Bills 24-14. I was surprised. I actually thought the Bills would try to use this as their real get right game because they lost to the Patriots last week. Something is happening with their offense. They're not able to run the ball anymore, and they're not able to stop the run either, because in this game, Bijan Robinson had 238 total yards. 150 or 160 of that was his rushing, and he had 86 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. It was crazy. So the Falcons were able to do whatever they wanted on offense, basically, and the Bills were just not able to stop them. I think they have some injuries on defense, but I feel like if their offense had played to its peak or its potential, they probably would have won this game and won this shootout. So let's go through some of the key player stats real quick, because I think this is kind of interesting. Penix had 313 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like I said, Bijan Robinson had 238 yards total offense, 157 rushing, 81 receiving, and 1 touchdown. Drake London had 6 receptions for 102 yards. I believe that's his first or second 100-yard game, but he's probably going to have 1,000 yards. The defense, this is the key thing. Finally, the Falcons are able to pressure the quarterback. They had 4 sacks and they got 2 interceptions, which is crazy. And the Falcons have a good defense now. They might win the NFC South handedly, but there's still Baker Mayfield to deal with in the NFC South. So maybe that's premature. The Bills, Josh Allen had 21 of 37, 242 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and he got 4 sacks, which is weird because usually the Bills' offensive line is very good at protecting him. At least this season, they've been very good at protecting him. James Cook didn't do much. He did have 49 rushing yards, but he had 13 carries. Dawson Knox was their lead receiver with 4 receptions and 58 yards. And then Josh Palmer was the other lead receiver, but he left with an injury. He had 64 yards. They weren't able to convert a lot, really, to be honest, and they need to fix that. Also, they need to figure out what's happening with their defense. Allen was pressured relentlessly. All right, then we go to the Bears versus the Commanders. Now, this is a revenge game. Last year, the Bears went to the Commanders, and this year they also went to the Commanders. They lost in the very last minute, the very last second. Jaden Daniel threw a Hail Mary and won, and that just started the streak of the Commanders beating everybody and then going to the NFC championships in the playoffs. So This was a revenge game for the Bears. They remembered that very well, and this was a very close game. They won 25-24 against the Commanders at home, and Caleb Williams had the game of his, career. Even though it wasn't a ton of yards, but it was 252 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions. So he's getting better. And then DeAndre Swift also had a great game. He had 108 rushing yards and 67 receptions for 1 touchdown. And that was a key touchdown. Bears had kicker Moody, who was actually cut. This kicker was actually cut by the San Francisco 49ers like a few games ago. And he comes in here to the Bears and has the game-winning field goal against the Commanders, which then completes the cycle of revenge against the Commanders. I can't say I'm not happy because the Commanders are within our division, my Giants division. So I was kind of happy that they took a loss here. And I always felt that their defense was kind of fraudulent and old. So I finally felt happy that somebody exposed them. But I still think their defense for the Commanders is actually still pretty okay to me. But I feel like there are loopholes there are holes to be exposed in them. So anyways, those are the games for the week, and there are a lot of games for next week, especially in the NFC side, but it's going to be quite interesting. And in the NFL, it seems like anybody can lose at any time, even if a team's really good on paper, but it's played on the field. You got to see it. And with the way teams use analytics and all these other information now, all these scouting information now, it makes the game a lot more even, and you have to always come in with your A game. Anyways, this is Sideline NFL edition. My name is Andrew Scott. Thanks for joining us this week. And I hope you guys have a great week coming. And look out for the NFL games in week 7. It's going to be interesting. All right. Have a good one.